llama from a weed supplier. I'm Muhammad to the rap game, that's my last name. My first should be Elijah, and I need a choir. Freak a flyer, gold medallion, Jesus peace. I'm the one, the real Jesus Maya, cause I'm trying to get niggas to leave the street. And I don't need to be, cause I can easily speak to these niggas through the frequencies to compete with me. You gon' need a priest to preach your sweetest needs, to give a hell of an Easter speech. I keep the heat right there underneath the seat. Got pulled over by the police this week. They asked me why I got this fully loaded piece with me. I say, officer, I'm just trying to make it home peacefully. So I'm riding with a rifle, another iron in the Bible. Call my niggas out in Paris, have them climb up the Eiffel. We don't give a fuck, cause it's all about survival. When you're caught up in the cycle, when you feel like you're entitled to more than what you get in it, to turn you homicidal. Y'all know that I'm the best, but I swear I'm in denial. And they don't wanna say it, cause I'm better than they idol. Got the mind of a disciple when I'm rocking the revival. But I'm soon to be the king. Fuck you and your team, bada boom, bada bing. If you don't like the way I rule my regime, let them up before June in the spring. I'm Desmond Tutu, mixed with the Zeus of the Zulus. I'm the leader of the new school. Man, I swear I'm starting to feel like Mandela. I'm with my troops in the field like Nelson. All these niggas wanna kill. Nelson. Y'all gon' make me do 20 years like Nelson. Man, I'm starting to feel like Nelson Mandela. 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 Side Nelson Mandela. Yeah, Nelson Mandela. Get to know your ancestors. Can't tell me they ain't jealous of a 7-gram seller. It was something about Mary, nigga. I was Ben Stella. Now the fan Mellors all the way from Manchester. Can't tell them shit if you ain't never spent time trying to sell a nigga just to get the car with the trunk in the front. Shout it, that's an elephant. Intelligent nigga with hella sense. Speak with such eloquence. Ever since I've been on a regiment, niggas been upset with Prince, but let them bend while I start a revolution. Seem like when you work hard, you never get your retribution. Niggas sending threats, but I keep something with me. Sound like doo-doo-doo-doo when I'm shooting. The same ones that was singing Huey Newton. Prince to a king, you don't see the evolution. 20 years in the PM, and that's really execution. So I encourage each and every student to stay in school, play it cool, obey the rules, or pay your dues, make a move, take a tool, or write some raps, make a mixtape with Clue, and you could be dope as me, every food boy. Trying to get 40 acres in the mule boy. Rhyme with 40 acres in the two-door. I feel like Lorenz Tate in the pool hall. Right before Terrence Howard at the Newport. I'm with my troops in the field like Nelson. All these niggas wanna kill. Nelson. Y'all gon' make me do 20 years like Nelson. Man, I'm starting to feel like Nelson Mandela. 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 Nelson Mandela.
Baby, how was school today?
Mom, these kids at school kept making fun of me and they kept calling my hair nappy. Why, Mom?
Tootie, look, just read this book and it'll tell you everything you need to know.
There's another N-word we throw around in and out of the black community called nappy. We have taken that word like the other N-word, nigger, and made it a word of adornment. I have heard the word nappy my entire life, which was used to insult, degrade, and hurt someone. This word is a derogatory term that was used in our ancestors to insult.
Available now.
I love myself.
Same tree, different brand.
I hope you love yourself, because love is only love.
when you love somebody else.
Alito. Hotep to my Egyptomaniacs. Uh, Lafia B for my West Africans. What up, man? We back at it again. Welcome to uh, Kofi Pasa TV via Kofi Pasa Research Team, KPRT for short. So, hope everybody is having a good afternoon. Hey, man. I don't know if some of y'all was there last night, some of y'all wasn't. We stopped through very quickly. Thought I had an Abba on the line, but the plans changed. So we just chopped it up on here for like 20, 30 minutes or so, and then we hopped off. Prior to that, we were at the Brother Lucky channel. Couple of different conversations, but my bro Lucky ended up falling asleep on us for the second time. And then we switched over to over here. Yeah, man, you fell asleep on us last night. Like, I see you listed that stream. You unlisted it, but good thing I clipped a certain part of it out when Root Words was talking about King Henry. So I was able to get back to it because I see you unlisted it. I went back to grab the clip, and I was like, damn, where the video at? So this stream right here is influenced by that stream earlier. Yeah, man, you 2-0. You 2-0. Or 0-2. Yeah, I told not a coincidence, man. We gonna have to make this motherfucker start standing up when he go live, man. But yeah, so let me play the section of the stream that inspired this video, right? And sometimes you gotta just let pseudos talk just to get these nonsensical claims on record. You know what I mean? And this would be a perfect example of that. So this is how we rocking. Welcome to KPTV. Nah, this okay. Hold on. We ain't rocking like that just yet. Hold on. This how we rocking right now. This how we rocking right now. Okay, I was about to say I had the timestamp on that motherfucker. Now y'all keep y'all fingers crossed. Y'all know how my laptop been BSing. If you play that doesn't again, surely try restarting your device. Right, so we gonna do is that right there. Then we gonna click clack. But yeah. While we do that, the conversation was about the slave trade. Hold on. The conversation went to the slave trade. Via the slave trade, we had our brother Root Words on. And some claims came out, some narratives came out, and I just find some of them to be outlandish. You know what I mean? And that's why I say when I say you gotta sometimes just let these dudes talk, let them get it off. Sometimes just to allow them to expose their ignorance. You know what I mean? So speaking of Exhibit A,
I'm scared to give y'all bloodline some goddamn credit, man.
Nah, yeah, just let them talk. Good.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say these motherfucking Africans. I don't know who they was. They were some gangsters from mine. Who me one free. That's what I'm gonna call them. Me one free Africans. Them niggas snuck on the boat. Turned that motherfucker on. This ain't no average boat. This ain't a canoe. This is a military boat. Took this military boat and snuck around 3 motherfucking military agencies. Then said me one.
bagged it up just a little bit for y'all.
Slaves and knowing how to sail and navigate.
And let's get
What do
it.
you mean they jumped on? What do you?
They jumped on the military boat.
How did you how did you come to that conclusion? What do you mean? Went home and went somewhere?
Amistad,
What?
motherfuckers jumped on their boat and went back to Amistad land.
So you think they just sailed over to the America?
They ain't never left the soil
There
that
we
he
go.
was goddamn born on.
I did not say that.
So what specifically about the slave trade do you got contention with? I know you said something, but I think I missed it.
I said it was dealing with more commerce, and I think most of them Africans went back home and went somewhere else.
How did you how did you come to that conclusion? What do you mean? Went home and went somewhere?
Amistad,
What?
motherfuckers jumped on their boat and went back to Amistad land.
So you think they just sailed over to the Americas, did some trade, and sold back, sailed
I'm
back?
just saying, what's the story of Amistad?
What about it? What do you tell me? What's the story of Amistad? Matter of fact,
The motherfucker jumping on some boats as slaves and knowing how to sail and navigate.
What do you mean they jumped on? What do you?
They jumped on the military boat. Turned the
What?
military boat
they
on
just
and-
hitched the. Y'all good? Volume good? I turned it up a little bit when I first started the video. I don't know how long ago you said that to me, but what did it say? Yeah, so I'm assuming y'all can hear it now. The volume is all cool. If not, I'm gonna start it again. If not, let me know. I'm bagging it up so y'all can catch that bullshit again. Some trade and sold back, sell
I'm
back.
just saying, what's the story of Amistad?
What about it? What do you tell me? What's the story of Amistad? Matter of fact,
The motherfucker jumping on some boats as slaves and knowing how to sail and navigate.
What do you mean they jumped on? What do you?
They jumped on the military boat. Turned the
What?
military boat
they
on
just
and-
hitched the ride.
Yeah.
Nigga, that's just
Did they hit the
random ass
ride?
DJ.
What do you mean
They
they
was
jumped?
they was
Well,
so
they
good with that boat. They snuck past people. They snuck past them. That's
Hold
how
on, they
cruel
snuck
was.
on the boat. Wait.
These people
How'd
don't
they
want to
get on
give
the boat?
Africans credit when they supposed to give credit. See, I'm giving Africans that.
Hold on.
Wow.
Hold on. How they get on the boat, brother?
Get on the boat.
They won't even let me give Africans credit.
I'm trying to
So they
understand
got
what
Go
you're
ahead,
saying,
go
bro.
ahead.
I'm scared to give y'all bloodline some goddamn credit, man.
Nah, yeah, just let them talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say these motherfucking Africans. I don't know who they was. They were some gangsters from mine. Who me one free. That's what I'm gonna call them. Me one free Africans. Them niggas snuck on the boat. Turned that motherfucker on. This ain't no average boat. This ain't a canoe. This is a military boat. Took this military boat and snuck around 3 motherfucking military agencies. Then said me one free. So if you telling me that some dumb motherfuckers from Africa didn't know how to sail, I proved you that they was some gangster sailors. I digress.
First of all, who said they was dumb and couldn't do certain things?
The whole world.
Like it's like this. Hold on,
Hey,
Root
you
Words.
asked me a question.
All right, hold on. We let you talk. I thought you're not done.
You asked me a question, but you weren't.
It was rhetorical.
No, he didn't ask you a
bro.
question. He
It
didn't
was
ask you a
rhetorical.
question.
I don't. You know what's crazy? They associate slavery with being dumb instead of just being a victim of your circumstances. That shit is crazy. Because Root Word's probably been in jail. Does that make him dumb? Right? No, right? So he won't say that he's dumb because he went to jail. You was a victim of your circumstances. But to the Amistad, right? These people, they didn't just get on a boat. They was being transported. It was Mende speakers. And yeah, they tried to hijack the boat and go back to Africa. But it didn't work out. They ended up in Long Island. Well, not Long Island, in New York. Well, yeah, it was off the coast of Long Island. But anyway, New York. I don't know where you're getting this made up story from, brother. But they did revolt on the ship, and nobody was weak or stupid. So
the sad thing about it, it's a whole movie. Like, bro, if you don't have the time to sit down or that want to put forth the effort to read a book, it's a whole movie about this shit.
Yeah,
You talking like them niggas just stuck their thumb out and hitched the ride to the Americans. No, nigga, it didn't work like that.
He watching the wrong movies though. What movie should he watch?
Shit.
How
You're
can a
supposed to be watching Amistad. That nigga, he got the
how
bootleg
can a person
version.
have y'all ever sailed a boat before? I
no,
can tell y'all never jumped in a boat and went sailing before.
That nigga still got a
no.
bootleg, man.
Do y'all know anything
That nigga
about
got the white
tacking?
disc,
Do
purple
y'all know
back.
what a tack is? Do y'all know how the
No, but look.
behind y'all's sail?
Yo, it's one thing to be able to sail. Like people know how to sail, right? They can, but they know they're on the shore. They have a vision, like they have the shoreline to look at. So they have a grasp of where they are. To be able to sail on that ocean and direct yourself when everything looks the same around you, that's something totally different, bro.
Not to see.
Nobody can just pick that up.
Nobody in the history of sailing has ever jumped in a sailboat and sailed. Ever. Not the greatest white man. The greatest white man can't do that. You can't just jump in a boat and not know about tacking.
Wait, why did you say the greatest white man?
And know about setting
That's
yourself
just
up
let you know how they feel about these motherfuckers.
Like, yo, that was weird. Not even the greatest white man. That shit is weird as fuck.
Not the greatest
like, that's the
Polynesian,
standard.
the greatest white man.
That's
pedestal
the
that they put these niggas on.
See, y'all don't want to tell the truth. These slaves wasn't slaves. These slaves that was around the world, especially in America, was professional people. See,
bro,
he pulled up the source.
Them niggas was enslaved. Hold on, first of all,
Bro, a 12-year-old can't be a professional.
Geez, they was professionals because they said they was
professional. What?
Professionals
was jailed, brother. They was locked up, and
they was
their fate was decided on trial.
They was not.
They wasn't treated as like humans. They was trying to see who they belong to.
See, y'all won't even let me narrate my story because y'all.
Yeah, but that's your problem. It's not your story, bro. It's our story, and you fucking it up, nigga. Like, fuck is you talking about? My story. You can't just make this shit up how you feel like it. No, that's your problem.
Some Africans.
These niggas, this nigga's retarded.
No, this nigga over here, you want to say they were some slaves? I'm gonna say these motherfuckers were some sailors because they sailed them boats good.
Well, you can say whatever you want, Root. That don't make it true, brother.
So okay, listen.
Look, saying that these people
I'm not gonna lie for history. If there were sailors on the boat,
that Africans went home, and y'all plainly told me that there's no proof of that.
Sailors on the boat, they wouldn't have ended up in New York. They wouldn't have ended up in New York if there were sailors on the boat.
And that's one story that proves that Africans.
What do you mean it's not one story? That's what happened. That's what the trial was.
See, that's when this bitch ass shit come out. Fuck that. Y'all need to let me talk.
This nigga's a clown. But you're not saying no, nigga. You keep saying you want to tell. You want to tell your story about the Amistad.
Like that, bro.
Talk this dumb shit. Go ahead. All right, since you ain't saying.
The brother wanted us to allow him to make up a story about the Amistad. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. This how these dudes are, man. This how these dudes are. This why this why I said let them talk sometimes. We know they don't know what the hell they talking about. We know that 90 to 95 to sometimes even 100% of the ish that's coming out of their mouth is some bull. But sometimes you got to let them talk to get these ridiculous claims documented. That's not the only ridiculous thing he said last night, man. You know what I mean? He exposed his ignorance willfully. Also, King Henry sailed to West Africa. Like I got that clipped up. That's the only reason I could get back to the video. Like, because I did watch a whole bunch of other shit after a whole bunch of other videos after I got off with y'all last night. You know, I'm on West Coast time, so it was still early over here, and I don't go to sleep till late anyway, right? So that was the only reason. Drunk facts, Khalil. That was the only reason I was able to get back to the video because I clipped up him saying that Henry the Navigator sailed to Africa. We know Henry the Navigator he ain't sailed nowhere, man. He ain't sailed nowhere. They just expose their ignorance, bro. The more you let them talk, it's like, and this is my misinformation side of it. Yeah. I'm out west. I'm in Cali. This is the misinformation police side of it. This is that misinformation police in me because it's like, you know, when you see when they see you see the dudes in the interrogation room, and they doing talking. This is why they tell you, motherfucker, don't talk, don't say nothing, because they gonna get you in that interrogation room. They gonna patronize you. They might even play some good cop, bad cop. You know what I mean? But eventually, while you over there spilling your guts, while you over there talking, running your mouth, trying to engage in conversation without spilling the beans, you just don't know that you giving them information. You just don't know that unconsciously they are picking up information, little bits and pieces off of some of the shit that you say. This is why they tell you don't talk. Don't say nothing unless you got your lawyer there. Smoke, you should have had your goddamn lawyer there, man. It's ridiculous. I'm gonna play a little bit more. Nah, matter of fact, he said all his claims. I'm gonna go ahead and get to the presentation because my brother Kofi, his presentation is actually on the Amistad, and this is years old, man. Years old. Hold on, let me plug up my laptop. Hold on 1 second, y'all. So what we'll do is get to this presentation and show y'all what actually happened in the Amistad, just in case some of y'all don't know. I mean, I know this Amistad situation is popular. You know, we got the movie to it and all, but we don't want no movie. We don't want root words, facts, alternative facts. We want.
So as I learned, we all learn.
We want what actually happened. You know what I mean? So I know Kofi is loud enough for you. Yeah, I started. I played the situation when it happened with root words last night. He basically thinks that the people of the Amistad situation got on a boat, snuck past, got on a military boat, snuck past the captains and all the sailors on the boat, right? And waited till they got in the middle of the ocean, slaughtered these people to steal their ride. It's just a bunch of nonsense, man. Just a bunch of nonsense. He basically saying Africans got on this boat, slaughtered the captain, went over to the Americas for trade, and then went back. Makes absolutely no fucking sense. So I'm gonna play for him what actually happened.
Excuse me, y'all. All right. Just to get some people may not be familiar with the Atlantic slave trade. I know a lot of people that watch my presentations are very knowledgeable, so I'm not trying to assassinate anyone character and say they may not know some things, but my presentation is not for those that may be intellectual, but those that may also be trying to come into information and may not be clear on a few things. So first, before I get into the presentation, I just want to drop a little information before I get into the presentation for those that may not know about what is the Atlantic slave trade. So the Atlantic slave trade, most slaves were shipped from West Africa and Central Africa and taken to the New World. General slaves were obtained thoroughly coastally trade with Africans, though some were captured by European slave traders through raids and kidnapping. So just a little brief information on the Atlantic slave trade or the triangle slave trade there. All right. The Anglo-Spanish Treaty of 1875. And this information that I'm giving real quick, family, is just so when I start going in the presentation, you can kind of understand and follow what I'm following with what I'm saying. So this here is the Anglo-Spanish legislature of 1817 to 1840, the Anglo/Spanish Treaty, and this specific. I'm gonna read some of this real quick, but I'm not gonna read all of it, and I'll explain it for those that may not know what the Anglo-Spanish Treaty of 1817, 1835. At the Madrid of the 23rd September 1817, Great Britain and Spain signed a bilateral treaty to abolish the transatlantic slave trade. It considered to be four main sections. Number one, the principal agreement for bringing about the abolishment of the trade. This is from Article 14. Number two, from a passport from Spanish vessel destined to the lawful traffic in slaves. Number three, instructors for the British and Spanish ships of war employed to prevent the illicit trafficking of slaves from Article 7. Regulations of the Mixed Commission, which are to reside on the coastal of Africa and the colonial possessions of his Catholic Majesty. This is from Article 13. In 1833, Great Britain passed an abolishment of slave acts to effect in August 1834, which emancipated all slaves in the British West Indies. By June 28, 1828 and 1817, the Anglo/Spanish Treaty renewed and enforced tightly in the scenes of amendment to the original treaty. The 1835 amendment was signed on June the 28th, 1835 by the Minister of the State, M. Moranis de la Rosa, of Foreign Secretary Vincent Palmerstone. So I didn't read all of it. I kind of skipped over a few little things, but this is a treaty that was started, we know, around about 1807. The British um, excuse me, they abolished uh, trafficking slaves or the Atlantic slave trade. That didn't mean that slavery, they abolished slavery. They just abolishing the kidnapping and the trafficking the slaves from West Africa into the Caribbeans, into South America, and into North America on the on the Atlantic Ocean. 1870, it took a few years, 1870. So this treaty was formed against Great Britain and Spain. Then it went from Great Britain, Spain to the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the people in America. This treaty was formed to abolish trafficking slaves on the Atlantic Ocean. Not saying that they abolished slavery at this time, just the trafficking of slaves, kidnapping and trafficking of slaves. So this is the abolishment. This is the treaty of 1817. So I'm just trying to walk y'all through a few things before I get started. All right. It is important to remember that there is a resistance through the transatlantic slave trade system, not just for resistance when Africans got to the Caribbean. There is a great deal of evidence and resistance when Africans were first kidnapped of the resistance on shores on the ships. In some cases, resistance involved attacks from the shores as well as insurrection aboard the ship. So right here, we know that our ancestors didn't lay down. I know that we have been painted a picture that once we was kidnapped, we did not fight back. We did not fight for our freedom. We did not try to liberate ourselves from the oppressor. Some captives, Africans refused to enslave, took their own lives by jumping from the slave ships or refusing to eat or just giving up and dying in despair. Captain Jaffa Bird described the incident in the Boston Weekly newsletter April 1737 when 100 enslaved people jumped overboard. Most were recovered, but 3 refused to save themselves, choose to the rather enslavement. Over 50 major mutinies occurred on the slave ships in the Middle Passage between 1699 and 1685. So I'm establishing this because anybody that may know about the Amistad revolt and know about Singpe Pei, who was the leader on side a ship called the La Amistad, which means friendship in Spanish. So this presentation is about this revolt and these group of Mende people from Sierra Leone that was led by an individual called Singbe Pei. So with this event that took place in the earlier 1900, there were many other revolts on the slave ships that we don't hear about prior to Singpe Pei revolt, the Mende people revolting on this slave ship called La Amistad. Now, it says evidence of 485 acts of violent resistance by the Africans exist slave ships and their crews. This included 93 cases of attacks from the shores by apparently free Africans against ships and longboats, and 392 cases of shipboard revolts by the enslaved. Of 392 insurrections, shipboard revolts by the enslaved Africans. 353, 90% took place in a period of 1698 to 1807. So I'm going to be talking about the period of 1839. So there was many revolts before we get to this presentation here. So I want to establish, when I start talking about this revolt on this slave ship called La Amistad, there was revolts before we get to the Mende people on this slave ship, the La Amistad, which were over 485 acts of resistance where our ancestors took over the ships and fought for their freedom. Even one incident where they gained the ship and turned the ship around and sailed back to Africa, which in this same incident, these individuals are going to try to do some of the same thing. So let's get into the presentation. So I just wanted to walk you through the Atlantic slave trade, just a brief information on the Atlantic slave trade for those that may not know. Again, I'm not trying to insult anyone intelligence, but those as well as those that may be well informed that watch my videos, and I have some that are not well informed that watch my videos. So I have to present information for everybody and not just one exclusive group. So I had to break down the Anglo-Spanish Treaty of 1817 because we're going to talk about this treaty between Spain, between Great Britain, between Dutch, between the Portuguese and the United States, because it's going to be very instrumental. And when I get into the case, which I'm not going to get in on the case on this part, on this presentation, but on part 2, I'm going to indulge into the Amistad case. All right. So then I had to break down the resistance, because again, this presentation is about the Mende people revolting on a slave ship called the La Amistad. So I wanted to show you that there was many other revolts or insurrections that took place on slave ships. Our ancestors didn't sit back and just be kidnapped or didn't try to fight back for their liberation and for their freedom. They fought back, took over slave ships and so forth. But this presentation I'm going to specifically be talking about, it changes, it set off a chain of events in the historical record by this these specific group of African slaves, Mendes, and you had a few other people from Mende or in the surrounding area of Mende, which is in Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa, that with this resurrection, things that transpire in America as well as in Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa. All right, let's get started. All right, in 1839, hold on, let me go back, because I hope I may have skipped something real quick, because I always have to put out a disclaimer before I get started, and I don't have the disclaimer in here. And the disclaimer is merely just stating that I am not a teacher, but merely a student sharing information. And it's a long disclaimer. And again, in the disclaimer, I have no problem with critiquing of my information. I have no problem if I am wrong in a certain area. I have no problem with going back and changing the information and saying that I am incorrect. I have no problem with updating information if more information has come available that I have no clue about. So I have no problem with that. I usually have my disclaimer in here, but I don't have the disclaimer in here. But let's get back into it. In 1839, slaves aboard a ship called the Amistad revolted to secure their freedom while being transported from Cuba ports to another. The leader was Singbe Pei, a young Mende man, but probably known in the United States history as Joseph Sinqui. And we're going to get into why they changed his name to Joseph Sinqui when he got to the United States. But even for those that may already know, we know that when we was kidnapped, we know that they stripped us of a thorough knowledge of ourselves. We know that they gave us their names, stripped us of our name, our names, and gave them their names, stripped us of our native tongue and gave them their native tongue, stripped us of our culture, our tradition, our identity, and replaced it with their identity. This is why we have black people running around here named Billy, Bob, Suzanne, Jill, Scott, and so forth. The slaves had been kidnapped mostly from the neighborhood of the colony of Sierra Leone and sold to Spanish slavers. They eventually received their freedom in 1841 after 2 years internments of the United States awaiting the verdict of the courts regarding their revolt. This was a celebrated Amistad case and the episode far better known in the United States than on the other side of the Atlantic. But the incident had far-reach impact on both sides, as I stated, influencing the course of American history and especially developing the Afro-American culture while in Sierra Leone, leading to the inauguration of American missionary activists that trained many of the elite groups to lead national movements to achieve independence and colonial rule. So I just want to give you a brief synopsis before we go into. So Singpe Pehi is a individual from Sierra Leone. He is the individual that started the insurrection on the slave ship called the La Amistad. Singpe Pei, the hero in this episode, was born about 1813 in a town called Mendi in Upper Mendi Country, which is in Sierra Leone, a distance of 10 days march from Val to Galanese Coast, said to have been the son of a local chief. He was married with a son and 2 daughters. Singpe was also a farmer. And for those that looked at my presentation, the Bundle/Sunday Secret Woman Society, if you missed that presentation, please go back and look at it. You can look at it on my Kofi Paisai TV or YouTube channel, or you can go to Masi Warrior Clan, which I'm a member of. You can go to that channel and you can view that presentation on that channel. And I talked about a lot of groups in West Africa, specifically with the women dealing with the Secret Woman Society, but I specifically deal with the people in Mende. So that presentation inspired me to do this presentation on this individual, this hero, this fearless hero, Singbe Pei, who is from Sierra Leone, from a country called Mende. January 1839, when he was captured in a surprise attack by 4 men, his right hand tied to his neck. He was taken to a nearby village where he passed 3 days with a man called May Agilo, apparently the boss of his captain, indebted to the sons of the Via King Mani Saka. May Agilo gave honor over Singpe to him in a settlement. After staying in Singpe town for a month, Singpe was marched to Lobonko, a notorious slave trading island near Salima on the Galinas coast, and sold to a richest slaver there, the Spaniard Pedro Blanca, whose activities had helped to make King Saaka wealthy as well. So Singpe was captured by another fellow African, and this fellow African was in debt to a king named Siheke. And we know, like, again, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. We had some people, had our own people, you know what I'm saying, to help the oppressor to kidnap, enslave us for free labor. Our own people today are still helping the oppressor to participate in white racist supremacy. So he sold Singpe to where he gave him over because he was in debt to another king, who then sold him to a Spaniard named Pedro Blanca, and then he was marched to this notorious Lobonko, this slave trading port where they had slave reservations on, slave fortresses on. At Lobonko, Singbe was imprisoned with other slaves, while fresh ones joined them for the 2 months they were there. Waiting to be transported across the Atlantic, most of the captives came from Mende country, as I explained. On this ship, Hotep, I am my brother's keeper. Peace, brother Rodney Keys, if you still on. Peace, Calvin Johnson, if you still on watching. Hotep, San Jehudi Ma'at. Hotep, Les. Appreciate Hotep Senate Lisa. Peace, Jamal Rogers. Hotep to you, brother Gib, T'Challa. Peace, Alvin Demetrius. Peace, Queen Ebony, if you're still on here. So I like to speak to those that I had to speak to, came in. So peace to you all. 2 members waiting. I don't know where. Okay, so like I said, most of the people that's going to be on the La Amistad. And peace to you, brother. I am my brother's keeper, because some of the information that you shot me, I'm using some of that information as well as with information that I had over maybe about, you'll see at the end, I think I got about 27, 28 sources that I did for this presentation. I put in a lot of work, a lot of hours to present this information. So peace to you, brother, for sharing some of that information that you had that I'm using in this presentation as well. So peace to you, my brother. I am my brother's keeper. So, but others were Kono, Sharibo, Timi, Kissy, Jibanda. So is the present day Liberia. So some of these names are also familiar to the family if you looked at my Bundo / Sandy Secret Woman Society. Because I talked about Sierra Leone as well as Liberia as well as Ghana. But I mentioned briefly on the Shabroad people. I touched on the Timni people, or the people that they call the Time people that was there in Sierra Leone before the Mindi people relocated there. The people or Mindi are believed to be the descendants of the Mali Empire, of the Malis that was in Gambia uh, Ghana, Ghana. I mean that migrated out of Ghana or ran out of Ghana doing out by the Fulani tribe. And the Timni people here, or the people they call the Time people, were already there before the Mindi people got to Sierra Leone. You got Kissy, Gambina in the present day Liberia, and Lomo present day Liberia and Guyana, where they are known as the Garasa. Some who did not speak Mindi learned the language during their forced journey through Mindi countries to the coast. Most were farmers. And again, as you watch that presentation of Bundy / Sandy Secret Woman Society, in Sierra Leone as well as Liberia, these groups of people was farmers. Their economics revolved around farming on the land, specifically dealing with rice. Peace, Charles Kenny. What's going on, brother? All right. Although these people were shipped from Lagombo in March aboard
So while that's loading up, we got that this brother was a Mende. He was taken from his village during the time of the illegal slave trade. He was put on a boat, shipped over from uh, Sierra Leone and over to an island where he was bought by the richest slave, right? The richest slave trader on that island. So now I think it's back up. We can continue going.
the schooner Takata, which arrived in Havana in Spanish colony of the Cuba in June. At the slave auction followed the advertisement, host ruins and Spanish plantation owner bought Sinpe and 48 others for $450 each to work on his sugar plantation on Puerto Rico Princess. And we know during this time, the sugar plantations was booming. So we knew our ancestors was kidnapped out of West Africa and took into the Caribbean on the islands on these sugar plantations to work for these Europeans. And I wanted to say something else, but I lost train of thought. And another Cuba port 300 miles from Havana. Pedro Montez, another Spaniard, bought for the same port, bought 4 children, 3 girls, and 1 boy. So keep that in mind. So we know Horst Ruins, he bought 48 slaves or 49 slaves for $450. Then you had another Spaniard Pedro Montez, who bought 4 children. He bought 3 girls and he bought 1 boy. And this 1 boy is going to become important in the chain of events that happened during the Amistad revolt, as well as them getting into America. All right. The 2 Cuban plantation owners obtained fraudulent passports for their human property from the captain, general passports that would allow them to transport their black Latinos, which are slaves, to Puerto Rico princes by the sea. It says 2 Cubans. So we know that they're talking about Hoy's ruins, and they're talking about Pedro Montez, who actually got fraudulent passports. Why would these individuals get fraudulent passports? Again, I showed you earlier on a slide called the Anglo/Spanish Treaty of 1817 and 1835, the abolishment of trafficking slaves on the Atlantic coast. So at this time of 1839, trafficking slaves was illegal to traffic slaves. So they would do certain things in order to go, because it was illegal now. They could own slaves because slavery was not abolished, but they could not kidnap any slaves and bring them from West Africa to another place. It was illegal to traffic them on the shores. So these guys will get fraudulent passports, birth certificates, and so forth. But we'll get more into that deeper into the presentation. The passports contain descriptions of each black along with a false Spanish name that they had been given by their purchaser. On June the 28th, 1839, the Spanish Dons loaded the Africans on a charter to mass black schooners called the Amistad. At first, in La Combo, they was at this notorious plantation. And they went on to what they went on to the Taracala. You can see here on this picture, they are being loaded onto this schooner ship. This schooner ship was called the Tokara. And we know, if you looked at some of my, I explained to you that it was a place that they went to in order to this auction. It was this auction that they went to once they kidnapped the slaves. They would designate them to another place where they will be sold at these auctions, where they will grease them with this certain type of grease and so forth to be sold to the highest bidder, and then travel off into wherever they was going to go, where is the Caribbean, where is South America, where is North America, and so forth. All right. So on June the 28th, 1839, the Spanish Dons loaded the Africans on a chartered 2-mast black schooner called the Amistad. Although they had papers, Montez and who he had, remember, he bought 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy. And Kel is the individual who they call the young boy. He's going to become very instrumental with Singpe Pehi doing this whole thing. And Ruins, who bought 48 slaves plus Singpe for $450. The vessel was subject to search by British slave patrol boats. The paper showing the captives to be Latinos or legal slaves born in Spanish territory. So again, these individuals created these fraudulent passports and birth certificates because at this time of 1839, it was illegal to kidnap and traffic slaves across the Atlantic coast. So these guys would do all types of illegal things, even though kidnapping and having people was illegal and immoral too, to get by. So they would change all these things up to make that when they was transporting these slaves, if they got stopped by the patrol, the Coast Guards or whoever they were that was cruising up and down the Atlantic Ocean and got stopped, they had this fraudulent paperwork to show them that these were actually slaves that was born and on the Spanish territory, and these individuals not kidnapped, forced on a boat, and then now setting sail to a new land or a new territory that they have no clue about, would not fool the consensus enforcers of the anti-importation treaty. None of these slaves spoke Spanish, and the children were far too young to have been born in Cuba before 1820. At midnight, the Amistad captains by Raymond Farrell sailed out the Havana harbor with his cargo of 53 slaves and about 40,000 in provisions. Schooner, because I talked about the Toracata, which they was put onto, that was in La Colombo, which was a notorious plantation. I mean, notorious a plantation, a plantation infrastructure, and then they was put on, loaded up, and put on after they got to the auction place, and these slaves were sold. They boarded another schooner ship called the La Amistad, which means friendship. And the schooner is a type of sailing vessel with forwards and aft sails on two or more masts. The most common type has two masts, the foremost being shorter than the main, while the schooner was originally gaff-rigged modern schooners, typically carrying the Bermuda rig. Although most associated with North America, schooners were first used by the Dutch in the 16th and the 17th century. I'm adding this in here because when you go back to the previous slide that I had, we had the captain Farrell, Raymond Farrell, who bought the La Amistad from someone in the United States, and he bought it from the United States. But these schooner ships were setting sail on the Atlantic Ocean before the 1800s, during the 16th and the 17th century by the Dutch. They were further developed in North America from earlier 18th century. So they was developed more, or they added more technology or advanced the schooner ships in North America, or what we call the United States of America, and came into existence in the use in New England. Schooners were popular in trade, requiring speed and windward ability, such as slave pirating, blockade runnings, and offshore fishing. For those that may want to know more about these slave ships and the technology of these slave ships, you can go to Mossy Warrior Clan channel, or you can go to my brother Eni Harret Facebook page and look up his technology video on these ships, and he breaks down each thing of these ships. Because prior to the Portuguese, and prior to I can't even think of the wicked Portuguese name, Prince Henry. Prior to Prince Henry and his institutions of setting up these institutions to develop the technology and to advance the ships, no one was setting sail across the Atlantic Ocean. We had boats, but we did not have the technology to set sails farther off into the Atlantic Ocean until the Portuguese began to create this technology. They chartered the Amistad from Raymond Farrell, who was both owners and captain. Apart from the 53 Africans, the 3 Spaniard owners, the schooners, carried a crew comprised of the master, Farrell, his 2 black slaves, Antonio, the cabin boy, and Silencio, the cook, and 2 white seamen. The ship also carried a cargo of dishes, clothes, jewelry, and various luxury items into their staple. The cargo was insured for $40,000. Ruins insured his 49 slaves for $20,000, and I'm going to come back later on sometime and I'm going to expose some of these insurance companies that have developed their wealth by insuring human beings. By insuring, and one insurance company that I had for maybe 8 years, a life insurance company, once I found out who this life company was, how it was established, how it gained its, how its owners gained its wealth, and so forth. It was due to writing policies for our ancestors, writing policies for human beings. So I'm going to expose a lot of these insurance companies that are still in existence to today that gain their wealth off of kidnapping human beings and working them for free labor. Ruins insured his 49 slaves for $20,000, while Montez insured his 4 children for $1,300. For the Africans, the voyage was to be endured, not enjoyed. Crew members placed iron collars around the necks of each slave. They connected each collar by the chains, you can see, to another slave, and whole strings of collars they chained to the wall. The Africans were kept in a suffocating heat of the whole most of the voyage. Time on deck was limited to meals and a brief relief breaks, taking a few at a time. And we can validate this also through another European who was on the ships, on many ships, and I can't remember his name now, but it's on my Kofi Paisai channel, where I went through his book, where he documented and recorded. He was there on the slave ships to exercise these kidnapped victims, our ancestors, to make sure they was in shape before they were sold or before they got to the plantation. They wanted their livestock, as they call them, to be in shape. So he was there and he documented when they was laying down, or they had buckets where they had to go and defecate, and some couldn't even get there because of the chains wouldn't reach to the bucket in order for them to use the bathroom, and the tremendous heat down below the ship where it was suffocating a lot of the ancestors that was down aboard the ship. So I can't think of the individual name. If it comes to me in a second, his name, I'll give you his name, give you the name of the book. If not, you can go back to my channel, just scroll down till you see something where I can't even remember what the title of, but I actually read some inserts out of his books. And this individual eventually became an abolitionist later on in time. Depending on where you're coming from, it doesn't take technology to advance boats to cross the Atlantic. Anthony Smith crossed the Atlantic in the raft with no motor and one sail. The current takes you right to South America. Okay, I am my brother's keeper. What year was this? Was this prior to Prince Henry and the Portuguese? Was it prior to his institution and the developing of the technology of these different boats, the schooner and so forth? Was it before then? If it is, can you shoot it to me? But for far as I know, prior to Prince Henry and the Portuguese, we had boats, but we didn't have the technology to set sail across the Atlantic, because it took months to get to another continent. It didn't take a day or two, it took months to get there. All right, the savage joke turned to the Africans to thought of immunity. One of the captives in the physical impression, 25-year-old named Cinque, used sign language to ask the ship cook, Celestino, what would happen to them when they reached the destination. Celestino was one of the European, or the captain, Pharaoh's cook. And you had another one, Antonio, who was a cabin boy. They worked on the Amistad for 3 years. So Celestino told Cinque a joke. Celestino smiled and pointed to a nearby pile of beef, indicating with his hand. Celestino told Cinque who is Singpe Pei, that the slaves would have their throats slit, be chopped into pieces, salted, and eaten by dried meat. So Celestino told them a joke that these Spaniards was going to eat them. And watch what happened to Celestino. Cinque or Singpe Pei, who had seen the barbarians of the Middle Passage, believed him. The startled new land leads Singpe Pei to call a conference among the slaves on their third day at sea. On one of the slaves, a boy named Keeney, later recanted what happened. We feel bad. We asked Singpe Pei what to do. Singpe says, me think, and by I tell you. Singpe then said, if we do nothing, we will be killed. We may as well die in trying to be free as to be killed and eaten. So after Celestino told this joke to Singpe that he and the others will be eaten by these Spaniards, Singpe discussed it with other people, and he set off the revolt on this La Amistad. The revolt, the trip to Puerto Princess usually took 3 days, but the wind were adverse. 3 days out at sea on June the 30th, Singpe used a loose spike he had removed from the deck to unshackle himself and his fellow slaves. He used a nail to actually free himself and free the others that was on this La Amistad slave ship. They had been whipped and mistreated, and at one point made them believe that they would be killed for supper and a rival. Singpe arrived on himself and the others with a cane knives. These fools at the bottom of the ship where they was at with all the other cargo had these knives open. I guess they assumed that they were secure. Our ancestors were secure and was not going to be able to get free from the shackles and so forth. Singpe armed themselves and others with the cane knife found in the cargo hold. He then led them on a deck where they killed Captain Sparrow and the cook Celestino and wounded the Spaniard Montez. So they killed the captain of the ship and they killed Celestino. Celestino was the cook of the captain. And he was the one that actually threw the joke out of there as the Spaniard was going to actually kill them, chop them up, and cook them for dinner. So they killed this the cook, who also was enslaved and was owned by the captain as well as the cabin boy Antonio, which we'll talk about a little bit later because we ain't going to hear too much about Antonio. I had to dig a little bit further in order to figure out what happened to Antonio through the historical record. But Singbe spared Montez's life together with those of Ruins and Antonio, the cabin boy. The mutineers lost 2 of their own parties killed by Captain Farrow. They 2 white seamen managed to escape from the Amistad in a small boat. So during the revolt, at this point in time, only 2 of the African slaves, of the African kidnappees, was killed by Pharaoh, or the Captain Pharaoh, before he was killed, and his cabin and his cook, Celestino, were killed. So now we're down from 53 enslaved kidnappees to 51. The mutiny had succeeded. The Africans controlled the Amistad. Singpe Pei ordered Montez to head east across the Atlantic to Africa. So Singpe was the one who initiated this revolt or this insurrection on this La Amistad ship. They looked at Singpe Pei, who were also looked at the highest esteem when he was in his town Mandi, amongst this Mindi people in Sierra Leone, due to some stories that was told of him killing a wild beast or killing this beast at this time. So the Amistad, so he told them to sell the Amistad ship back to Africa. He knew that the sun rises in the east, and he knew what direction they was going into. So he wanted them to turn around and go east toward the sun, where the sun rises at. The Amistad drifted off Long Island, New York, in the late August of 1839. Singpei others went ashore to trade for food and supplies and negotiate with the local seamen to take them back to Africa. Now, here, before I go any further, I have a lit map here, and you can see them leaving Cuba, and you can see the zigzag. This is how the ship went back and forth, back and forth. During the time of Montez traveling on the ship, Singpei wanted him to turn the ship around and sail back east, because he know the sun rises in the east and they was going in the other direction. So at nighttime, Montez or the Spaniards would turn the ship around and would go back the other way, and they will figure out the next day that they was going in the wrong direction. So you can see here the path of the ship in its zigzag motion, going back and forth, because Montez was trying to trick them at nighttime to head in a different direction. So they ended up drifting into America, and they was headed to Puerto Rico Princess, but they ended up, which was going to be a 3-day trip, which turned into a 2-month trip. So they was on the Atlantic Ocean for 2 months on the Atlantic Ocean until they arrived in the United States of America on the where the Amistad drifted off Long Island, which is in New York, in August of 1839. Singpei and others went ashore to trade for food and supplies and to negotiate with the local seamen to take them back to Africa, which was a captain named Captain Henry, who they tried to communicate with him through sign language, because they could not speak English, because these were people from Sierra Leone and also from Liberia. Majority of them was from Mindi, and they spoke Mindi. And the few that was not from Mindi, that did not speak the Mindi language, they learned how to speak the language while on board the La Amistad at this time. So they was trying to communicate with a captain named Captain Henry, Captain Henry Green, if I'm not mistaken, through sign language to get them back to Africa. And they was going to exchange the valuable goods that I went over on another slide, that not only the slaves were there, or the kidnapped victims were there, they had other items on board that they was willing to give this captain in order for them to board the ship to send them back to their homeland. News soon got around about the mystery ships in the neighborhood, with her sails nearby all blown to pieces. It was a low black schooner, the stories of which had been appeared in the newspapers in previous weeks as the ship cruised northeast along the U.S. coastal line. Reports said the Cuban slaves had revolted and killed the crew and Spanish ships and were roaming the Atlantic as buccaneers. So this was some of the information that was presented in the newspaper. I'm going to show y'all some primaries. I'm going to show y'all some news clippings. I'll show y'all some letters and so forth that I've retrieved. All right. In August of 26th, the United States surveyed Brig Washington. This is the USS Washington, or the Brig Washington ship here, under command of Lieutenant Commander Thomas R. Jetney, sighted the battered schooners near the Colonial Points on the eastern tip of Long Island. The United States Navy and the Customs Service had previously issued orders for the captures of the ships, and the commander Godney seized the Amistad and took her into tow in New London, Connecticut. Arriving there the following day, Gagney sent a message at once to the United States Marshal of the New Haven, who in turn notified the United States District Attorney, Judge Andrew Johnson. The Later, we're going to talk about Judge Andrew Johnson a little bit. The later was certainly no friend of the black man. From in 1833, he had prosecuted Miss Prudence Crandall for admitting Negroes into her school in the Canterbury, Connecticut. All right. New York Sun witnessed Syncope defiance of his captors and repeated an attempt to escape. Syncope jumped overboard and had to be dragged back into the ship. So this here is a picture, and this here is of the movie. I actually, after I got through looking at the, after I got through putting together the presentation, I looked at the movie for the first time. I thought I had already seen the movie because it came out in 1997. But that was actually my first time looking at the movie, which was a good movie. The movie didn't document everything that happened during this event. So a lot of this information I'm gonna have, I'm gonna have in my it's in my presentation, in this part 1 and part 2 that you may not see in the movie. But here is Syncope that jumped overboard into the ocean, and they retrieved him. All right, and here is a picture here, or a drawing of Syncope. Now is actually talking to the his people on side on the La Amistad after he was retrieved from being overboard, and now he's trying to get him to fight again against these individuals who tried to take over the ship. Hold on. Jumped overboard and had to be dragged back onto the ship. He urged his fellow slaves to fight against hopeless odds and was taken away to American vessels and separated from his men. He made, hold on. He made such violence a protest that the naval officer allowed him to remain on the Washington deck, where he stood and stared fixed at the Amistad throughout the night. The New York Sun reported. They ended up putting Syncope, peace, Tawanda, peace, Shawanda, Hotel Damo. It was in 2011. And I'll check it out too. I am my brother's keeper. Peace. That's his name, Alexander Falconbridge. Appreciate that, Edmund, brother Edmund. Alexander Falconbridge, just going back, I was talking about earlier about on one of the slides I was talking about how they was packed in as cans, and they had buckets, and they had to defecate in the buckets, and they was chained to each other, and some could not cross each other because the chains wasn't reaching. They had to defecate on themselves. He talked about the diseases that transpired of them being down there for a long period of time while they defecated on themselves. Certain types of diseases transpired down there because of the heat. A lot of them suffocate because of the horrendous heat. So I was trying to tell you about this individual, Alexander Falconbridge, who also wrote a book, who was also on numerous of ships, who was also a doctor, who was there to help those that was on board, as well as the kidnap, to make sure that they stayed in shape, kept them healthy to end up to these auction place on the islands to be sold and shipped off to numerous places. So Alexander Falconbridge, so you can look him up, or you can go on my page. I read a couple of inserts out of his books. I talk about him on my African Drums presentation as well, so you can look at either one of those. It's on Kofi Paisa TV. All right, here are a few of the news clippings here where it talks about these Africans actually on the in New York on the coast of Long Island. So these are just a few snippets that I took and I put in here just for some more documentations to kind of bag up what I'm saying. He said smoking in the Havana deck and the judge from. So I'm not going to even read all of this, but you can go back and you can pause it and you can look at these articles, these news clippings where these people actually wrote about these people, these Mindy people and a few other people that was not from Mindy that actually revolted on the La Amistad revolt. So these are just a few clippings, newspaper clippings, so you can go back and you can look at this. These are some of the primaries. Peace, Sister Tiffany. Peace. All right. Judge Johnson held on the, okay, this is just, so we talk Judge Johnson Anderson T. Johnson. Judge Johnson held the court on aboard the Washington on August the 29th in New London Harbor, examining the ship documents and hearing the testimony of Ruins and Montez as, oh my goodness, hold on, y'all, because I think, oh, no, hold on, y'all. Me, I'm trying to see something. I'm just trying, okay. Because I got two presentations on here. I'm sorry. Let me go back because I don't want to jump into another presentation because I only want to talk about was the insurrection of the Ruins on board of the documents and hearing the testimony of Ruins and the Montez. This is the time when the USS Washington was sieged the La Amistad and sieged the kidnapped victims, as well as the two Spaniards, as well as the cabin boy Antonio, that they do not mention. But I'm going to mention him in part two because the more research I've done, I didn't hear about Antonio or even hear about the four children that was bought by Montez, the three girls and the one boy, which we talk about. I'm gonna talk about the one boy, Kel, as they called him, because this young brother was very smart, very intellectual. He caught on quick to a lot of things, so he was very vital to the abolisher movement and so forth. Ruins and the Montez, as well as their urgent request, the ships and its cargo, including the Africans, to be surrendered to the Spanish consul in Boston. Johnson immediately released, so Johnson was on board the ship. This is before the case. I'm not talking about the case. We're going to talk about the case in part two. But he boarded the ship, evaluated, examined the things that was on the ship, and so the documents and hearing the testimony of Ruins and Montez. These are the two Spaniards. We know Ruins bought 49 slaves for $450 each. Montez bought 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy for $1,300, as well as their urgent request that ship all this cargo, including the Africans, be surrendered to the Spaniard consul in Boston. Johnson immediately released Ruins and Montez and ordered the Cinque and others to be tried for murder and piracy at the next session of the circuit court, due to opening on September the 17th at the Hartford, Connecticut. The Africans were consigned to the country jail in New Haven. So now that Johnson boarded the ship, examined the things, and got the testimony from these 2 wicked Spaniards, he released the Spaniards, right? But he enslaved our ancestors. So he enslaved the people from Sierra Leone. They actually jailed them in Connecticut. So, and they actually was trying to convict them of murder and piracy. But again, as I mentioned, the Anglo-Spaniard Treaty of 1875 and 1835, it was illegal to kidnap and transport kidnapped victims across the Atlantic shores, because Great Britain abolished it in 1807. It went through its chain, and then they made a treaty with Spain. They made a treaty with the Dutch. They made a treaty with the Portuguese. They made a treaty with the United States. So they abolished trafficking of slaves across the Atlantic Ocean. So you could not go in and kidnap anyone from West Africa and bring them across the shores into other different places. So they was already breaking the law. They was already breaking the law again for kidnapping human beings in the first place. But now these people who broke the law and trafficking human beings across the Atlantic Ocean, and these Mende people, these African people, our great people, took on a revolt and killed the captain, killed one of the cooks, took over and seized the ship, and tried to set sail back home to their own homeland because they was kidnapped and separated from their family and finna go somewhere and be worked to death to continue to build wealth for these wicked Europeans. So now they are now trying, now they are in the United States. We know that once they took the ship over, Montez Cinque Pei wanted them to set sail to turn the ship around and head east because he knew the sun rises in the east and they was going in a different direction. But at night, the Spaniards would trick them and would turn the ship around and set sail. That's why when I showed you on the map that I cut off the zigzag, the ship took a zigzag. They supposed to got to Puerto Rico Princess in 3 days. But due to the insurrection on the ship where our ancestors and our fearless ancestors, Cinque Pei, with the other Mende people in Sierra Leone took over the ship, they went on this zigzag ride back and forth, which supposed to took 3 days. Ended up they was on the Atlantic Ocean for 2 months. And prior to them being on the Atlantic Ocean in 2 months, they landed in New York, which is on the shores of Long Island. And again, they was taken siege by the U.S. Washington, which was also another ship up under Lieutenant Godney. So now the judge came onto the ship to examine and to get the testimony from these 2 Spaniards, these wicked Spaniards, and then try to convict these people that they kidnapped for murder and piracy because they was only trying to get back home to where they was because they was kidnapped and took to another foreign place and then sold and now going to a sugar plantation to be worked to death. Meanwhile, Ruins had renamed Cinque to hold Cinque. So this is how he became Cinque. Because again, they set up Montez and Ruins, they set up these fraudulent passports and they set up these fraudulent birth certificates. So we know when the Atlantic slave trade jumped off in 1492 and so forth, we know when we was kidnapped, we was kidnapped and they stripped us of our names. They stripped us of our native tongue. They stripped us of our culture, our tradition, our spiritual systems, etc., etc. And again, that's why I say we have black people running around here with the name Billy, Bob, Jill, Susan, and so forth. We have they have taught us to take on the identity of them. So they changed his name to Cinque, and it was a fraudulent birth certificate, and they changed his name for the purpose of they was actually breaking the law on the shores because of the treaty between Great Britain, Spain, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the United States, where they abolished the kidnapping and trafficking slaves across the Atlantic shores. So they put these fraudulent documents together in order, in case they got stopped crossing the Atlantic Ocean. They had these documents that these kidnapped victims, these Mende people from Sierra Leone, West Africa, was already in their possession. Slavery was not abolished. We know slavery wasn't abolished until 1863 and officially in 1865, as we thought. But that's a whole other story. But in 1812, just in 1817, or the treaties were set forth, and in 1833, these treaties were set forth for the kidnapping and the trafficking across the Atlantic Ocean. You can have own slaves, but you couldn't traffic them. You couldn't go and kidnap them anymore and then traffic them across the Atlantic Ocean. Now so if you was to set sail with some people that you had, they had to be already on your plantation, had to be born on your plantation, and now you're moving them to another location or another continent and so forth. And this was not the case for these 53 kidnapped victims from Sierra Leone and Liberia that was on the Amistad at this point in time. They was kidnapped from Africa, from West Africa. They was not born on one of these Spaniards' plantations. Now, the abolitionists stepped in. At this time, and this is from the Amistad book, the abolitionists stepped in. And at this time, the U.S. anti-slavery movement was in disarray, with divergent views on several issues: political action, women's rights, Americans. So at this time, in 1839, okay, before 1839, you know, we began to have these Europeans, these white people, started to feel a certain group of people that they called the New Awakening that started to take place in the early 18th century. So in the early 18th century, we know that we was conquered and we was enslaved up under the banner of Christianity. If you look through majority of my presentations and through the documentations that I have shown you previous to the European coming into Central Africa and into West Africa, we had our own spiritual systems and we was introduced into their systems. So, and I showed you exactly who these people was evoking, the name of the spiritual systems and so forth. So now we know, even I showed you with the Portuguese jumping off the Atlantic slave trade, their main thing was to come into West Africa to rape the people of the natural resources and to convert the people into Christianity. I showed this through the documentation, even through some of the documents of coming out of the Europeans' mouth themselves. Now you have in the 18th century, you have these certain Christians that they call the New Awakening. And through the New Awakening, these people are feeling sad because you have a group of people from the 14th, 15th, 16th century that has been kidnapping Africans and raping Africans, raping the natural resources over there, murdering Africans, and so forth, now have been reawakened and saying this is not the Christian way. So these people became what they wanted to set up to abolish slavery all the way around the board because slavery was still legal. It was just the trafficking of slaves across the Atlantic Ocean that was illegal at this point of time. So the abolishers stepped in, but through this time of them stepping in, they was already in disarray because they couldn't agree on politics, political views. They had women rights they couldn't agree on. The American churches, they couldn't, certain things with the philosophies they couldn't agree on. So it was in disarray. But with this event that took place with Cinque Pei and the other 49, not the other 49, but the other 52 Africans that was on the La Amistad that revolted on the Atlantic coast or the Atlantic Ocean, it actually got these abolishist groups back together. The Amistad provided a focal point for rallies of dispersed ranks and abolitionists, and they all came out in defense of the captives. Fully convinced of their innocence, they was put forth in the Heralds of Freedom. This was a newspaper. Cinque is no pirate, no murderer, no felon, because again, they are trying to convict those kidnapped victims, those 53 West Africans of murder and piracy for killing the captain and his cook and causing an insurrection on the slave ship called La Amistad because they were trying to liberate themselves, become free, and get back to their home, to their families. So when they set sail and they made it to America, now they are trying to be crucified by the courts, by our government, saying that these people are murderers. And all along, Montez and Ruins, these Spaniards broke the law by going and kidnapping these 53 Africans in West Africa and trafficking them across the Atlantic coast. So these abolishers came to the aid. Once the abolishing movement came to their defense and their aid, they are the ones that started to defend these 53 Africans from Sierra Leone and from Liberia. Cinque, and again, this is not his name. It is Cinque Pei, but we know Ruins changed his name because Ruins purchased Cinque Pei and 48 of the West Africans, and Montez purchased 4 children from West Africa, 3 girls and 1 boy. Oh, shoot, excuse me. So Cinque is no pirate, no murderer, no felon. His homicide is justified. Had a white man done it, it would have been glorious. It would have immortalized him. Joseph Cinque, whose name is not Joseph Cinque, his name is Cinque Pei, ought not to be tried. Everybody knows he is innocent. He could not be guilty. The paper added that the lieutenant commander, Jigney, this was the lieutenant that was aboard the USS Washington, who sieged the La Amistad ship with the 53 Africans that was on board. Was actually, there was less than that. They started out with 53. 2 got killed while the insurrection or the revolt took place, which was spearheaded by Singpei Pei. So 2 of the Africans was killed. So they left them with 58. But aboard the ship only had enough food for a supply for a certain amount of days, because they was being transported from Cuba to Puerto Rico Princess, which would take 3 days. But during the insurrection, it took 2 months, because they ended up in the United States because of the revolts and the zigzagging motion of Montez trying to trick them every time Singpei told him to set sail where the sun rises in the east. So they ended up with this zigzagging pattern. Was on the Atlantic Ocean for 2 months. So 10 more of the Africans died on the ship due to them not having enough food to feed themselves. So now we're subtracting from 58, not 58, but 53, and we're subtracting their there's 12 gone now. Of the aliens are Joseph Leviticus, editor of the Emancipation.
Oh man, I muted myself again. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna speed this up a little bit. I know Kofi is he going in right now. This is the Kofi we all miss, but I want to keep this digestible. You know what I mean? So when he reiterating some of this stuff, which I understand, he pounding his point home, which needs to be done. But I'm skim through some of these last couple of slides, so as to make this stream digestible and not too long.
The officer organs of the American anti.
While we waiting on that, I see Brother Unc is supposed to be having a conversation with one of these
We know
abos.
once these individuals came into Africa.
So once this is over, let me see. It's supposed to be going on. It's supposed to be going on. What is this? The 14th? Yeah. Aboriginal Powers channel. In about 5 minutes. So they ain't gonna immediately cut the stream on and get to it. I believe they usually start off with a song or two that might take anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. So we good. We keep going at the correct pace. We should be right on time. So I definitely want to catch that. Um, but yeah, we'll keep going. I think my brother Kofi just got a couple more slides, like 2 or 3 more slides, and he will have laid his point down. We might come back for the part two that he dealt with the case with, if I can find that. But as far as right now, let's keep doing what we're doing.
They brung their religion. They conquered us up under the banner of their religion, which was Christianity, and they will bring in their missionaries. Their missionaries would spread their gospel. They will indoctrinate our people through the missionaries and them setting up schools where they colonize these different areas in Africa. So the American Missionary Society was very instrumental into freeing the people in Amistad, which also set off some chains of events or some historical events in America, as well as in Sierra Leone. But we're not going to talk about those events until we get to part two, which won't be today. But you had the Amistad Committee, which later became the American Missionary Society. But right now it is the Amistad Committee by these 4 abolishers who came to the defense of Sinpe and these other West African individuals that was on the La Amistad. So you have Joseph Levidius, who was an editor of the Emancipator of the official organs of the American Anti-Slavery Society. Reverend Simon S. Jolius, a white pastor of a black church in New York. Peace, Aruba, peace, Hotel, Brother Robert, peace, Brother Robert June, peace to Tecumseh, if you still on here, cuz, peace to you. I done spoke to everybody else on here. All right. So you have, so now you got Joseph Leviticus, you have the Reverend Simon S. Jones, a white pastor of a black church in New York, and you have Louis Tybee, who is the leader, who actually formulated the Amistad Committee with these other 2 guys. Louis Tybee, a wealthy New York merchant and a prominent abolisher. Tybee launched the campaign for the defense of the Amistad Africans and issued an appeal to the the Friendship of Liberty. 38 fellow men from Africa having been particularly kidnapped from their native lands, transported across the seas, and subjected to atrocity, cruelty, have been thrown upon our shores and are now incarcerated in jail. We know that they are being incarcerated because once Judge Johnson came aboard the ship to examine what was on the ship and to get the testimony from the 2 Spaniards, Montez and Ruins, then he set up a date for them to preside in the circuit court. So, and they was being and the Africans were being tried for murder and piracy, while the 2 Spaniards wasn't being tried for nothing. And take it amongst again, they broke the treaty of the Anglo and the Anglo and the Spanish treaty of 1817 and 1833. These treaties between the Great Britain, the Dutch, the Spain, Portuguese.
All right, so this is what we gonna do. We gonna move up a little bit. I know he shows the Spaniards, I believe. Hold on, let me see. Let's check it out. So while it's doing this, rule words. Hopefully you're watching. Hopefully you're getting an understanding of what happened during this Amistad debacle. Now these Mende people were not hitching a ride. They weren't hitchhiking. You know what I mean? They weren't sneaking on the ship to uh, just to uh, kill these white folks to go over to the Americas and do trade and go back home. That wasn't the case. I have no idea how you came to that conclusion, but my instinct, my pseudo senses, is telling me that you haven't done the due diligence to actually inquire about what happened in the first place, right? So we keep going.
Here, and Reverend Joseph, Simon father, Joselians, I'm saying it right, Reverend Joseph Levitius. So these was the founding members of the Amistad Committee, which will later become the American Missionary Society. All right. This strong conviction was, however, not
So let me read this. Hold on.
no. The abolitionists had to get African versions of
the abolitionists had to get the Africans' versions of the events to obtain counsel and prove their innocence before the circuit court. They held no illusions about the difficulties. The day following Judge Judson's orders, the abolitionists of the New Haven met and wrote. Oh, man, I wish I could clear this resolution a little better. But I don't want to shit. It's already buffering bad enough as it is. I'm overworking this processing power. Excuse me. They held no illusion about the difficulties. The day following Judge Judson's orders, the abolitionists of New Haven met and wrote to fellow abolitionists in New York to check on the validity of the ship's documents, find an African who could speak the language of the captives and recorded their own versions, and finally obtain qualified counsel. A committee formed to defend the hapless Africans formally became the Amistad Committee on September the 4th, comprised inter alia of, excuse me, hold on one second. Inter alia of Joshua Leavitt, editor of the Emancipator, the official organ of the American Anti-Slavery Society, Reverend Simeon S. Jocelyn, a white pastor of the Black Church in New York, and Louis Tappan, a wealthy New York merchant and prominent abolitionist. Tappan launched a campaign for the defense of the Amistad Africans. So, again, these folks are not hitching rides. We are also not um, downplaying African intelligence when we say that these people were not uh, sailing to and fro the Americas before this transatlantic slave trade experience. Yeah, yeah. So this is Been uh, it's been asserted that they were hitching rides basically from our brother Root Word. So we'll keep going. Let's see what the next slide is. I don't wanna get too hung up on one slide, but yeah, here we go.
Up and down because at the daytime the Spaniards would set sail where the Senpe Pei, who was from the Mende tribe in West Africa, who led the revolt on the slave ship, wanted them to sail east, but because the sun rises in the east.
So yeah, Kofi, Kofi is going on a tangent. It's that pass to Kofi. I'm trying to be able to see so I can read that top line for y'all. Oh. I can't see that, man. And I have to play the with them. See.
Turn around and eventually ended up in Long on the coast of Long.
This strong conviction, however, was not enough. The abolitionists had to get the Africans' version of the events to obtain counsel to prove their innocence before the circuit court. They held no illusions about the difficulties. The day following Judge Judson's orders, the abolitionists of New Haven met and wrote to fellow abolitionists in New York to check in. Okay, we already read this. All right. Same time slide. Same slide, and we change right about here. Yeah, Kofi was going on a tangent, but this is what we love. This is the Kofi we love. You know what I mean? That's Pastor Kofi. He go in, he go in, and he gonna make sure that he get his point across, which is needed, because we'll do these presentations, man, and motherfuckers act like they still don't know what's going on. Right. So let me see what y'all talking about. Yeah. You know how it is, bro. You done been here. So I think he got one more slide left, and I'm trying to get to this slide for y'all. We don't see how that work.
Because they set a revolt up on the Amistad.
Yeah, see what I mean. He going on a tangent. He going in though, man. This is what people want to see. They we love that passion. We love that passion that Kofi gives, man. We'll have to get him. We'll have to get him on the mic a little bit more often. You know, he was coming there Sunday, and then in between time as well. But from the conscious community, which I definitely understand. Uh, yeah, I'll see it. I'm just now coming back, trying to do something here and there. Roger Baldwin was a Yale educated 46-year-old. Bear with me, y'all. With a reputation for defending the unfortunate when he was asked to represent the Africans of the Amistad. He first became associated with the abolitionist causes in 1831 when he confronted a mob seeking to block construction of a training school for Negroes in New Haven. So Baldwin was joined on the Amistad defense team by Theodore Sedgwick and Seth Staples, who would later found the Yale Law School. Baldwin's principal legal goal was to win the freedom of the Africans, and the argument he stressed those he thought most likely to produce success. Often these were narrow property law based arguments rather than moralistic on slavery. Baldwin, however, did argue that Ruiz and Montez were the criminals, not the Africans who fought for their freedom, and that the two Cubans deserved the penalty of death for piracy. All right, so salute to Roger Baldwin. He was a real one. He was a real white nigga. Salute to all the real white niggas. Yeah, man. I believe this was the last slide, and then we have he put a diagram of pictures, but we can skip that and just go to the source material. Let y'all get that. So you know what I mean. Don't want to leave that out. That way y'all can go back, check the sources, vet them, get further information on said subject, and anybody that feels like we had anything wrong, you have the source material to be able to go back and review the work. Yeah, man, trill white niggas, man. Roger Baldwin was a trill white nigga, man. Salute. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
That happening on the Atlantic Ocean. Here are some more of my.
There we go. Let me go back. I can get a full view of these sources. You can get the source list. You can pause it, screenshot it, go back, check it out. You know what I mean? That way you'll see you won't be able to say we hide nothing. Usually we keep the sources in the description, but this is way before we start doing that, so way before we start doing that.
People, the Gala people, I talk about the Va people, the Kono people, the Kenne people. So I talk about all these different people that was involved in the secret woman society, but I specifically deal with the Mendi people, and just doing research on the Mendi people, Singpe Pei fell in my lap, so I started to do some research on the Amistad revolt that happened on the Atlantic Ocean. Here are some more of my references here. So I keep that up there for a few minutes, so you have a whole page that I just showed, and then you have a few here on this page of references and sources that I use here. All right. Please go subscribe to the Seshu Ma'ami Meta Netter. This is the Seshu Ma'ami Meta Netter banner. I am a member of the Seshu Ma'ani Meta Netter group. We are a group of like-minded individuals who indulge in the language, which is called Rani Kemet, and the writing system, which is called the Sesh Meta Netter. So please go subscribe to our channel. We have bukus of presentations where we actually transliterate and translate the glyphs. We talk about the history. We talk about the culture and the traditions of Kemet, what y'all call Egypt. Also go subscribe to Kofi Paisai TV. This is a new channel. This is my channel. It's been up for maybe 4 or 5 months. Appreciate the support that I'm getting now. So please go subscribe to that channel, which tomorrow I'll be doing part 2, where I'll be actually going into the case, the one which deals with the district court, case 2 which deals with the district court, case 3 which deals with the Supreme Court, and then after they are free after the Supreme Court, what happened after they was freed, what happened when they got home, what happened, they set out these events in Africa, what happened to these individuals that actually came back and set up institutions, what are these institutions, and so forth. Y'all don't want to miss that one. That's tomorrow on my channel. Also go subscribe to Mossy Warrior Clan, which I'm also a member of. Please go subscribe to that channel. We have some presentations up now. The Sandy / Sandy Secret Woman Society is on that channel, as well as Kofi Paisa TV. A few other my presentations is on the Mossy Warrior channel. Be looking forward to the Gala Geechee presentation that would also be on that channel, which I hadn't started on it yet. Which will be, I'm going to try to connect the Gala people that's in.
Yeah, so there we are, 2 hour mark, 2 hour and 2 hours and 2 minutes. Perfect. Yeah, that's old school Kofi, as y'all see. You know what I mean? That's as I learned, we all learn Kofi. You know what I mean? That's Black African Power family. That's that Kofi. I don't remember that, man. I don't remember that, man. You know what I mean? We gonna pull him out of this. We gonna pull him out of that hole. Like Satep said, we gotta get him mad. We gonna tell him the Albo said they created chocolate chip cookies. He gonna come out that hole. Goddamn it. Hey man, appreciate everybody for coming through. Part 2. If I honestly don't know if Kofi did the part 2. I'm gonna try to find it. If he did do it, I will play it tomorrow if that's what y'all want. Honestly, I'm gonna play it tomorrow anyway. That's what I want, goddamn it. I'm interested to see what happened after they were free, and the intricacies of these court cases. So yeah, man, I'm definitely going to see if I can find that. If I can't find it myself, I'm gonna hit Kofi up and see, can we get that so we can play it tomorrow, because I don't know if anybody else is interested, but I definitely want to see, like, you know, what happened afterwards, the after effect of that, with these 51 Mende brothers and sisters did, and how this case influenced America. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna take y'all out same way I took y'all in, and that's with our good brother Saha. Salute y'all. Let me see. Matter of fact, hold on. Before I go, let me see. All right, I thought it was supposed to be dealing with the eyeball. Looks like he over on Sinetta channel doing something. I'm gonna peek in over there and see what's popping. Y'all enjoy the rest of y'all day, man. Somebody might go live later. Keep your ear to the YouTube streets.
I'm a freedom fighter, Dalai Lama from a weed supplier. I'm Muhammad to the rap game, that's my last name. My first should be Elijah, and I need a choir. Freak a flyer, gold medallion, Jesus peace. I'm the one, the real G's admire, cause I'm trying to get niggas to leave the street. And I don't need to be, cause I can easily speak to these niggas through the frequencies to compete with me. You gon' need a priest to preach your sweetest needs, to give a hell of an Easter speech. I keep the heat right there underneath the seat. Got pulled over by the police this week. They asked me why I got this fully loaded piece with me. I say, officer, I'm just trying to make it home peacefully. So I'm riding with a rifle, another iron in the Bible. Call my niggas out in Paris, have them climb up the Eiffel. We don't give a fuck, cause it's all about survival. When you caught up in the cycle, when you feel like you entitled to more than what you get in it, to turn you homicidal. Y'all know that I'm the best, but I swear I'm in denial. And they don't wanna say it, cause I'm better than they idol. Got the mind of a disciple when I'm rocking the revival. But I'm soon to be the king. Fuck you and your team, bada boom, bada bing. If you don't like the way I rule my regime, let them up before June, nigga spring. I'm Desmond Tutu, mixed with the Zeus of the Zulus. I'm the leader of the new school. Man, I swear I'm starting to feel like Mandela. I'm with my troops in the field like Nelson. All these niggas wanna kill Nelson. Y'all gon' make me do 20 years like Nelson. Man, I'm starting to feel like Nelson Mandela. 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 Side high. Nelson Mandela. Yeah, Nelson Mandela. Get to know your ancestors. Can't tell me they ain't jealous of a 7-gram seller. It was something about Mary, nigga. I was Ben Stella. Now the fans mail us all the way from Manchester. Can't tell them shit if you ain't never spent time trying to sell a nigga just to get the car with the trunk in the front. Shout it, that's an elephant. Intelligent nigga with hella sense. Speak with such eloquence. Ever since I've been on a regiment, niggas been upset with Prince, but let them bend while I start a revolution. Seem like when you work hard, you never get your retribution. Niggas sending threats, but I keep something with me. Sound like doo-doo-doo-doo when I'm shooting. The same ones that was singing Huey Newton. Prince to a king, you don't see the evolution. 20 years in the pen, man, that's really execution. So I encourage each and every student to stay in school, play it cool, obey the rules, or pay your dues, make a move, take a tool, or write some raps, make a mixtape with Clue, and you could be dope as me, April Fool boy. Trying to get 40 acres in the mule boy. Rhyme with 40 acres in the two-door. I feel like Lorenz Tate in the pool hall. Right before Terrence Howard at the Newport. I'm with my troops in the field like Nelson. All these niggas wanna kill Nelson. Y'all gon' make me do 20 years like Nelson. Man, I'm starting to feel like Nelson Mandela. 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 Nelson Mandela.
Hey, baby, how was school today?
Mom, these kids at school kept making fun of me and they kept calling my hair nappy. Why, Mom?
Tootie, look, just read this book and it'll tell you everything you need to know.
There's another N-word we throw around in and out of the black community called nappy. We have taken that word like the other N-word, nigger, and made it a word of adornment. I haven't heard the word nappy my entire life, which was used to insult, degrade, and hurt someone. This word is a derogatory term that was used in our ancestors to insult people.
Available now.
I love
On
myself.
Same Tree, different brands.
I hope you love yourself. Because love is only love when you love somebody.